Should I just begin? First, thanks to Juliet for inviting me to this monumental event. And I don't know if she's going to thank me after I'm done. But so my piece is called Muro. I'll just start right off. I brought notes and then I lost them, so please forgive me if I ramble. Anyway, this is a piece. Now, it was created during the time when Trump was building his wall, obviously. I mean, that's, if I hit you over the head with a hammer, that would be less than knowing this. But about the genesis of it, it's a piece that was worked over another piece which had been lying around for 10 or 15 years. So, I don't know if anybody remembers Monty Python, but to me it was like the skit where they have Thomas Hardy on the beach and they have two sportscasters wondering what his first word on his novel is going to be. So they go 10 years, I guess, in the skit, and that's about the same as me. And the only word he does is "the," and then that's the end of the sequel. So hopefully, I did complete this. But now the genesis of this is obviously the wall, and I believe that art has to be contextualized in any political and social context. I think even if you don't try to do it, you do it. This was deliberate, but after I got going with it, and after Juliet had asked me to do a piece on it, I thought more about this piece, and it went into like 20 different directions, and I'd like to discuss a few of those first. But first of all, medium, it's on wood, and there's a wallness to it. So the artwork becomes self-referential, and it also has the idea of whatever the person takes away from it. Obviously, the political one is pretty clear in this, but there's other ones. I'm a big fan of Jasper Johns. He did a lot of stuff like this way back in the day, and Robert Rauschenberg, but I wasn't thinking about that when I did it. Now, somebody's asked me about the hand, and I kept it deliberately not colored because obviously the first subject of this is the Hispanics coming up from Latin America. But I wanted to make this more universal in the sense of people trying to break through barriers. So, hence there's no color on the hands. It could be any of us in different circumstances. And in this case, it just happened to be germinated from those events. Now, I have to tell you, I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico. So the immigration thing is a little bit different for me than it is for people up in Massachusetts, for instance. I went to school with Native Americans. The immigration problem has been bubbling there since I was born. I was born in 1950. So we have a different take on it. It's not, there's a personal event I had which spurred this, I think, was I was hitchhiking back from San Francisco in the 60s, and I was down the bottom of New Mexico around Las Cruces. Had no money, shirt on my back kind of thing, out in the middle of the desert. I'm not exaggerating here, and who knows how long I would have lived, but anyway. But as you diminish their dimensions down to 2, then that's not so obvious, but you can use that compositionally to divide different ideas within the same space. For instance, if you have, it's like holding two different thoughts in one hand, in your brain. So I use that for the idea of, for instance, in a dream, you have a consciousness, and then you have a subconsciousness, according to some people, and even if it's biochemical, like in dreams, you have walls and you have repression, and some things enter the wall and some things are blocked by the wall. And if you can put that down and simulate that in art, you're way ahead of the game, it seems to me, because it makes it interesting, stimulating, and people ask questions about it. So I brought along a few of these that were sort of germinated from this piece, and I know it's the other way around. Usually people, well, they'll do photos and they'll do drawings first, and then they'll work, for this monumental painting that they're going to do. But I reversed it, and so this one is called the finish line, and the line is obviously the wall. So I'll pass these around if you want. It occupies at least 2 different functions. It's the visual representation of a wall in the mesas, and then it's the division of the photograph into 2 different spaces. So it's really two different ideas. And it works, I wrote some variations of it. And when the wall stops being two-dimensional and becomes one-dimensional, it becomes a line. So it becomes totally abstracted, so the whole idea of a wall is diminished, and then you just have sort of this this abstracted idea of division, and this probably is the best example of it. This is called shock. And shock is really a mechanism whereby you go from a normal state to an abnormal state almost immediately. So I kind of like the implications of that. And then here's the walls. Here's a type of wall that this might be a dream sequence. So you have, it's unified in the sense that this is the dreamer and this is his dream, but then you have the outrageous sort of contortions that a dream might put you through. And I thought it was a lot of fun doing this one. Truth. And it's based on Rousseau too, on Henri Rousseau, who did the primitive painting.
Go the other way.
And here's yet another wall, which divides, it's more of a political statement. It's called Advance with an exclamation point. And it's the idea of, here's everyday life, the political back and forth that we suffer through on MSNBC every day. This happens to be a French crowd in the 1940s, and this is a Soviet soldier, a very famous photograph of him leading his troops in the battle. And I added the flying saucer because of the idea of progress. We have to move forward because we can't afford to move back. So it's sort of a polemical statement. But then again, the wall divides it. I mean, here's the practical and here's the ideal. So that's what I was sort of looking for. And here's a more I don't know, maybe this is harder to get, but it's based on the idea that when men and women were just wearing loincloths or living in caves, the first art came from caves. I mean, you know, what has survived at the caves of Lascaux is from 25,000, 30,000 years ago. And so that's where walls and art also merged. It was from the very beginning. So here we have hieroglyphs also merged. It was from the very beginning. So here we have hieroglyphs on, in the background there. And a woman meditating, I think, probably on another form of art. And here's yet another wall. This is the Berlin Wall. And of course the Berlin Wall is probably the most notorious wall ever made, but we still have walls. We have walls on the West Bank that contain the Palestinians. We have walls in Belfast which separate the Catholics and the Protestants. So the Berlin Wall got short shrift. It just got too much negative publicity, but really what it was about was the division of capitalism and socialism and how we deal with that. And this one's called Three Little Pigs. And the pig in the foreground isn't one of the three little pigs. So, and that's marked in the back. And then finally, I was talking about how politics intrude in my art all the time. It's sort of deliberate. This is really about competing ideologies. It's called On the Beach, meaning like a whale that's on the beach is in serious trouble. Here we have socialism on the beach, and on the wall it's represented. But way out, even worse, is capitalism, which is the Titanic sinking, you know, which is inevitable. So what we have two competing ideologies. Neither one is successful, you know. And On the Beach, the movie, was about the end of the world. I don't know if people remember that. It was by Neville Shute. It was a totally depressing movie, and it was shot in black and white. So again, the walls can be used, and walls are used for graffiti just around the world. There's a universal notion that if you want to make a public statement, go write it on a wall. And so there's a synergy between art and walls and public, public discourse, which you don't find on television because of interest to penetrate into all forms of our lives, subjugate us to whatever the interests of the power structure are in whatever country it is. So anyway,